think this is either the next to the last lesson, or it may be that we have that I'll have one more lesson for the end of the year before we complete this. One of the things that I want to do is I have elicited some feedback from you guys as to uh, what you would like to study next in this class. Last week, I believe David Wiggins said that he would like a study on the subject of grace. God's grace for us, um, especially in regard to how difficult it is for us to accept God's grace, forgiving ourselves, overcoming our past, that kind of thing. If I did a class on grace, it would be what they call systematic theology. I would kind of want to just look at grace overall as it's found in the Bible, and then make some very specific applications to us and some of the lessons that we have. So, if that is something that interests you, or if you have something else, certainly if it is not used this time, we're always looking for means to, to have different topics. This one just happened to be a lengthy one in the sense that this has, I think it's 19 or 20 lessons to it. Living Jesus, we're looking basically at the Sermon on the Mount. Today, our text is under Trust God Alone. So we are in Matthew chapter 7, and the verses 1 through 14. We began this study last week, and we talked about the judgment portion of the text. There is a phrase in this text: "Do not give what is sacred. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls at swine." We began that, or at least discussed a bit last week of what it meant, or what it might mean to give dogs what is sacred, or throw your pearls to pigs. And we'll continue that discussion today. A lot of times, I think I even have a little slide here. A lot of times we think, since this comes immediately after the section on judging, that Jesus is kind of reversing himself on what he said about judging. And he says, "Judge not, that you be not judged, for with the same way you judge others, you will be judged." But then, "Do not give the dogs what is sacred." Doesn't that sound like a judgment? That you are actually judging someone to be dogs, or judging someone to be swine. And is he reversing himself on the second question? Is Jesus saying that there are some who perhaps do not deserve the gospel? When it comes to what we have a message, we have a precious message. It's described as certainly as pearls. Is he saying that there are some who do not deserve the gospel? What about you? Do you think that that's the case? Do you think there are some that do not deserve the gospel? Go ahead. Okay. It might very well be what Jesus is talking about here. While Jesus came to die for the world, and we sing the song, "The gospel is for all, the blessed gospel is for all, the gospel is for all," not everyone is equally prepared to receive it. Sometimes that's just a matter of timing. There are a lot of things that someone might suggest to me, say when I'm angry, that it may not be the best time to suggest to me, if you know what I'm saying. You might want to wait till I'm a little bit farther along in whatever thought process maturing. So, in the same way, there are people. I have done Bible studies with individuals who, um, because of the sinfulness in their life, which they, by the way, admitted, you know, I like the way I live. I'm not really ready to change yet. Well, it's awful dangerous, I think, to put things like that off. But they're not, obviously, they're not ready for the gospel. And so it could, maybe Jesus is saying something like, you need to read the room. Some people aren't ready to hear the gospel. It can be almost like throwing pearls before swine in some cases. And in the sense, what you're doing is you're spinning your wheels. You're wasting your time. There's got to be somebody out there who is willing to hear the gospel. And if we spend all of our time on the hard cases, I have always been one, though never to want to give up on anybody. I've always been one to say, okay, all right, now what we have to do is we need to move them over from the active evangelism list more to the prayerful list, the prayerful evangelism list. So for now, for a while, while God is preparing them, I'm just going to spend my time in prayer. And I have seen that very effective. I've seen people turn around just when the timing is right. Or should I say God's timing is right? Another way for us to look at that, if I may just talk for a moment, is that it may not necessarily be their timing, it may be God's timing too. God has timing that we need to pay close attention to when it comes to reaching out to other people. And sometimes it may not be God's timing. Sometimes we try to force something that they're just not ready for. Occasionally I have people say, well, you know, my kid's 14 years old, still hasn't obeyed the gospel. You know, um, what should I do? Well, I do think that is reason to be concerned. 12, 13, 14, if a child's been brought up in the Lord, is a time where people start to think about those things. And it is something to be concerned about. But not to the point that we have to force anything on anybody. Maybe it is just a matter of slow maturity or something that has to be resolved. And so we put that over in God's hands. Anyone else? What do you think? Or you think there are some that do not deserve the gospel? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's good. You're not going to hurt studying the Bible with someone, and maybe that's what you need to do. It's just that, and I've had people both in this congregation, the congregations, that would say, look, it's about time that my child should accept Christ, but they're not ready yet. Would you mind studying? More than likely, though, I will have conversations with people who have children 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, and parents are saying they really want to be baptized. And are they old enough to be baptized? Do they know what they're doing? And so, oftentimes what I have seen in terms of children have been on the other side of it. Um, and that also gives you possibility for a lot of things. First of all, I think the gospel is for all. Jesus didn't say go into all the world and preach the gospel to white middle class people. He didn't say go into all the world and preach the gospel to people who are like you. He didn't say go into all the world and preach the gospel if it's an easy thing to do. He said preach the gospel to every creature. when it really comes down to it, it's not up to us. Conversion is not up to us. And that's something in over 50 years of ministry that I still haven't fully grasped, that it's not up to me. I cannot, by the force of my will, make someone accept something they refuse to accept. But worthy, none of us deserve the gospel. None of us are worthy of the gospel. So I don't really think that's what Jesus is saying here. It might be a practical strategy. And I think what he's saying is practical, but I'm not so sure if it's about outreach. Number three, there we go. Is Jesus condemning judging by quoting a hypothetical critic? In other words, is he saying, but Jesus says don't judge, but do we really need to throw what is holy to the dogs? You know, do we really need to cast our pearls before swine? And so maybe they're arguing with Jesus, so to speak. He's kind of throwing up a straw man to be. I don't think that's the case either. What's going on? Who did the Jews consider to be dogs? The Samaritans, but not just the Samaritans. Pardon? Non-Jews. All Gentiles. As a matter of fact, Jesus is he's going to talk about that in several places. He's going to remember the Syrophoenician woman that wanted Jesus to heal her daughter, and he says it's not right to take the bread away from the children and give it to the dogs. Now, I think Jesus was testing the faith of that woman in what he said. I don't think he was doing that. But the Jews generally thought, and the Syrophoenicians would have been Gentiles, the Jews generally thought of Gentiles, non-Jews, as being dogs. What was one of the things in your mind that you can think of would be the most unclean thing for a Jew to do? Think about it for a second. Pardon? Okay, yeah, that would be incredibly unclean for them to do that. I was thinking of the ceremonial laws in regard, and that is a ceremonial law. But I was thinking like with pigs, they wouldn't eat swine, they wouldn't eat pigs, and but actually the Gentiles really like that. I am a pig-eating Gentile. I love that. Where did I go? I went somewhere the other day. I was very surprised. They had barbecue ribs on the menu. And I got the barbecue ribs every time. Man, you're going to serve ribs? I'm going to eat the ribs. I'm sorry. Just the way it is. So I'm a pig-eating Gentile. But the Gentiles would often even sacrifice a pig on a grave to consecrate it. So it's kind of like really different in a worldview. So Glenn Stosson, in the little book that he wrote about Christian ethics and the Sermon on the Mount, he says he believes Jesus is talking here about not just any Gentiles, but the Gentiles that were kind of in control of the world, or at least the Jewish world at that time. And he believes that this section on judging or giving pigs what is sacred really should not be considered a part of the section on judging, but rather a part on the section of trusting God for what you need. For example, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find. Well, let's just look at the text here. I may even have a fourth one. I'm sorry, this doesn't seem to be working and my arm's not long enough. Okay. Stosson would say Jesus is changing the subject altogether. Let's go to the next slide. Matthew 6, let's begin reading it. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces. So Jesus is not just saying here that we should have this elitist attitude, but he says sometimes when you take what is precious and you give it to someone who's not going to appreciate it, it's going to come back to you negatively. In other words, in this case, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces in the sense of the dogs. Stosson, and I'll just give you a little shortcut here. Stosson believes that the pearls being spoken of is not the gospel. He believes the pearls being spoken of is your allegiance, your trust. So suddenly you're seeing this in a different way of a whole different paradigm. You're not talking about giving something precious in the sense of the faith, but you're talking about giving your allegiance to those who don't deserve your allegiance. Have you ever done that? Have you ever trusted the wrong people? Shared the wrong thing with people, and they are not worthy of holding a trust? And what's happened almost every time when you do that? I mean, you can almost, sometimes by the time something is out of your mouth, you realize, I shouldn't have said that. And then it comes back to bite you. So Stosson sees the pearls as being your allegiance as a child of God. And he sees the dogs, or the pigs in this case, in the Jewish context of what's going on there, of being the Roman government, being the governmental authorities, being those that you're being asked to trust. One of the things that was the case in ancient Israel is they were always trusting the wrong people. God would say, I'm here to take care of your needs. Let me take care of your needs. But then here comes some foreign power over here. They begin threatening Israel or threatening Judah. And so what do? They go over here to the Egyptians and they say, please come take care of us. We will become your vassals if you will protect us from this enemy. Or maybe to Babylon, or maybe Assyria, or maybe the Syrians. And they were all the time trusting the wrong people, when really what they should have done is put their trust in God. And every time, it came back to bite them. So I don't think it's a coincidence that the very next section in our text deals with who we should trust. Look what he says. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. We sing that, don't we? Ask, and it shall be given unto you. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. Jesus says, ask. James, half-brother of Jesus, says, look, the reason you have conflict with other people is because you have conflict inside of you. That's James 4. He says, so the problem is you want, but you can't get it. When really what you should have done is ask God to give it to you. So he says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds. And to him who knocks the door will be open. Which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? You gonna? I'm watching some of my own home videos as I try to digitize them. And sometimes I think I was a mean old dad um, because I like to aggravate my kids. And sometimes I would tease them and play with them. But I'll tell you something. In my meanest moment, never, if there was a true need, would I have given them something bad when they asked me for something good. And Jesus says that. You know, we ourselves as human beings are evil, and sometimes we don't do what we should. He says, but even we know how to give good gifts to our children. And he says, or if he asked him a fish, would he give him a snake? If you then, though evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? This lesson really only has one message. I'll give you a list of applications at the end, but it really only has one message. Why put your trust in things that will not get you what you need? Why do we trust things that are only going to come back and bite us? God is the only one who is worthy of our trust. Now, I'm going to have to admit, sometimes it seems like God is a long time answering prayer. Have you felt that way sometimes? Sometimes you feel, God, I mean, you said to ask and it will be given. Wow, I've been asking for a long time. You know, where is it? And you said, you know, knock and you'll open the door. But here I am. I'm standing and I'm knocking and I'm knocking and I'm knocking. The door's still closed. It's difficult for us. I have come to think of prayer a little differently than God's vending machine in the sky, where you put in your good works, you put in so much money, you push whatever you want, and there it is dispensed there for you. Prayer is kind of the crucible in which our will becomes God's will. You know what I'm saying? It's when what we want suddenly begins or gradually begins to merge with what God wants or what God wants for us. So it's not just a matter of dispensing the right request. I have this little thing called BookBub, and it sends me every day a list of Kindle books that are either discounted or free. I like the free part. But I read some of those, and a lot of them have to do with prayer. And just as you read the description of the books, it's like how to make your prayer powerful, or how to get what you really want in prayer. It's kind of like if you say the right words, or if you do the right thing, it's almost like sympathetic magic. You know, if you just do the right rituals or the right acts, suddenly God is going to dispense you everything you want or everything you need. Prayer doesn't work that way. Never has worked that way. That's not what God is trying to say. You just need to find the right words to say, or you need to pray fervently enough. No, that doesn't work like that. But God is saying, trust me. Trust me. And I will fulfill your needs. It's hard to trust sometimes. That's why it is so easy for us to trust the easy fixes that's in the world. Because while we're waiting, I had a professor in my postgraduate studies who had the expression, giving birth to an Ishmael. That was the expression that he used, giving birth to an Ishmael. And he described that's when we become so impatient with what God is doing that we take matters into our own hands. Just as Abraham went to Sarah, and Sarah gave him Hagar, and maybe this is the way God is going to answer. You know, God made that promise, but it was 25 years before Isaac was born. And so he was a little impatient. And so basically he took Hagar, and together they gave birth to an Ishmael. And that situation has been difficult ever since that time. Giving birth to an Ishmael. That's when we don't trust God, but we take matters into our own hands. So what is being spoken of here is trusting God and not all the other things that we might put our trust in as a shortcut to getting what we want. Pigs and dogs, according to Stassen, are references to Gentiles, especially the Romans. What is sacred and pearls refers to our allegiance, who we trust. And trampling and being torn to pieces are the consequences of those who give their allegiance to those not worthy of trust. Now, we mentioned that we've all been there before, right? We've all been there where we've shared something about ourselves and it was shared openly. Or people, worse yet, people take what we say or what we've done and they'll turn around and throw it in our faces. Trusting what isn't going to provide the things that we need. And so the point of the text is that God alone is worthy of our trust. Only God can give us the things that we need. I want to go through a few applications. One of the reasons I think Jesus is telling this is very practical. The religious organization of the day, they were in collusion with Rome. The Sadducees, who were basically in charge of the temple system, they were in collusion with Rome because their interest was basically taking care of themselves. That's what they wanted, is to take care of themselves. And so by being in collusion with Rome, it opened them up to a lot of compromise, to a lot of corruption. I think it's true when we look at the system that we're under today as well. And I'm talking about the government, but it could involve many other things. It could involve religion. But certainly, you just look at it. Help me. Is there corruption in our government? Okay, you laugh. You laugh when I ask that question. So you're saying there's corruption, but there's no corruption in the Republican Party, right? Right? What? You're saying not. Let me tell you, this whole system is so filled with corruption. You hear these politicians say something, and you say, he's on my side, she's on my side. You know whose side they're on? Their own side. Now, I'm not saying there aren't good people that make it into politics. I happen to have what would he be? My son-in-law's brother. Okay, he's in Missouri politics. He is Speaker of the House in Missouri politics. I don't doubt that I'll hear his name in association with Washington, D.C. one day. Good man from everything I know him to be. We need good people in politics. But the problem is good people in politics do one of two things. They either get eaten up or they compromise. That's kind of what happens because this is just this big system, this big machine. And when you think the government is on your side, you need to think again. Government's not on your side. I think that just as the Jews risked trusting Rome, and of course, eventually, you know what happened to Jerusalem because of Rome, right? Rome destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple. destroyed the Jewish people as any sort of really nationality there. And it's all because in the early days they had trusted them. So I guess what I'm saying is you can't trust the system. The only thing, the only person that we can trust is whom? God. Only God can give you. Because the government wants something from you. It wants your allegiance. It wants your obedience. It wants your money. It wants to control you. And I'm not anti-politics. I really do think that Christians need to be as involved as much as we can be in some of these things. But still, don't trust the system to do what's best for you, because you're not going to find it there. Secondly, do not trust money and things to buy you happiness or security. Money and things, that's the wrong thing. As soon as you put your trust in things are going to disappoint you. When my kids were coming up, I've always been a technology kind of guy. Always, as much as I could afford it, the newest and best computer. I would say for the first 40 years of my life, I was on the cutting edge of technology. To tell you the truth, the last, what would this be, 25 years of my life, technology has moved at such a pace, it has passed me by, I'm telling you. But I grew up teaching my kids, technology will always disappoint you. I don't care what it is. You may buy this little gadget. I was watching a video of me opening a Christmas present, and my sister-in-law gave me a little gadget that I had always wanted. This was 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. And I opened that up, and I said, oh, this is just what I wanted. I don't even remember what it was. Technology will always disappoint you. Just as soon as you put your trust in technology, it's going to disappoint you. The same thing about things that you can buy or money. You put your trust in things, those things can evaporate faster than you can imagine. Number 3, do not trust culture to advise you on sexuality and morality. How about this? I want to find out how I really want to live, right? So I turn to Netflix. You think Netflix is going to tell you how you really ought to live? What about your social media? You think social media is going to tell you how you really ought to live? What about the advertising world? I was reading this article, and they were talking about a show that aired. It was called, I think it was Mad Men. Never watched it, but they were talking about the show. And it said the show was very savvy. You know, that's the problem with some of these shows. They have such good premises, but they are full of such objectionable material you can't watch it. But the premise was that somewhere around the 60s, corporations decided that they were going to tell you what you wanted, so you would buy their products. And Mad Men was about how through the advertising process they were able to make that correction. And you could see so many things happening during the 60s regarding the way we look at morality, the way the things occurring, even to this very day. We can't trust culture to advise us on sexuality and morality. And let me say this, you may have a best gal friend or a best guy friend, and you may go to them for advice when it comes to how you need to live your life or what you need to do. Whenever you start hearing people say things, well, what you need to do is follow your heart. What is it that really makes you happy? You see what I'm saying? Immediately, it's pointing back to all these subjective things that's only going to come back to bite you, just like the dogs or the swine are going to come back to you if you trust the wrong thing. Only God and His Word, it is a suitable guide to tell us about sexuality, morality, or any other way that we need to live. We need to trust God to provide even when we're tempted to compromise. Because that really happens. That's just like with Israel. How Israel said, okay, we'll trust the Egyptians, we'll trust the Assyrians, we'll trust the Syrians, we'll trust Babylon. They'll take care of us. Or Israel often turned to idolatry. They look over there and their neighbor's crop is great and your crop isn't doing so well, and they worship this idol. Well, maybe what I need to do is worship this idol too. And if I do that, then if I trust in this idol instead of Yahweh, then maybe my crops will improve too. It's such a temptation to trust in things that will not give us what we need. Only God can do that. I think I got one more point. Be persistent with your seeking, with your asking, and with your knocking. Don't give up. That's really where it comes down to us as far as trusting God, because other things aren't going to satisfy. If you try to drink salt water, it will never quench your thirst. And in the same way, only what God can give us will do that. Let me tell you what will happen if we put our trust in God. If we put our trust in God, no matter what happens, and I'm saying this, part of this is experience, and part of this is what I have seen happen. But if we put our trust in God and truly trust in God, then that peace will come upon us. The idea is that no matter what happens to me, come what may, I know God is going to take care of me. So I'm going to keep asking, I'm going to keep seeking, and I'm going to keep knocking. Because only He can satisfy. Everything else is not. So, our question for the day as we conclude is, have you put your trust in God alone? Because that is where we need to be, trusting Him every day. Something Jesus has already said, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Hey, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you. I think we only have one more lesson. Next week, we'll look at that.